Hello there.
This is where the fun begins.
Hey there guys, Unofficial Star Wars here. Hope you're all doing well, and in this video we're going to be talking about an exclusive The Bad Batch Season 2 producers addressing canon restrictions, what it's like to work with that creative type of mindset there, and when it comes to expanding this blind territory essentially here, I think is the proper term to use for the Star Wars canon here, taking place before the events of the original trilogy, directly after the events of Order 66, and everything like that. Let's go ahead and hop right on into it. In this video, I'm going to be taking a read from the Director article. I'm going to have the Therefore article linked in the description down below for you guys to check out there as well. As I read, producers for Season 2 of Star Wars The Bad Batch on Disney Plus have responded to questions of Star Wars canon restrictions. While the time between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope went unexplored on screen for years, that has all changed with Star Wars Rebels, Rogue One, A Star Wars Story, and one of Lucasfilm's latest animated series, Star Wars The Bad Batch. The series' first season, which debuted in May of 2021 on Disney Plus, focused on experimental Clone Force 99 during the events of Order 66 and the early days of the Empire. But since the integral season concluded, Lucasfilm has further explored this overall era with Obi-Wan Kenobi, Andor, and will continue to do the same within Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order sequel, Jedi Survivor, and so much more for what they have planned after that. Out ahead of the Bad Batch Season 2 premiere, the show's producers have commented on creating a new season while also respecting the ever-expanding Star Wars canon of what's already existing and what's already there. That being said, how has Star Wars The Bad Batch avoided canon conflicts? When asked about The Bad Batch sharing the same post-Republic period as Obi-Wan Kenobi and Andor, show producer Brad Rue explained to The Direct how the animated show has more wiggle room, quote-unquote, and who the showrunners look to in order to navigate the astrofield that is, well, Star Wars canon, saying that in full quotes, honestly, we're still a little bit earlier than those shows. We do have a little bit more wiggle room, you might say, for our Star Wars space dads, ending the quote right there. The article goes on to continue to say that even though both Obi-Wan Kenobi and Andor include flashbacks to the earlier points in time, as Brad Rue had noted, the bulk of the shows themselves take place later on in this post-war period, compared to what The Bad Batch does with pretty much directly after. For instance, while Season 1 of The Bad Batch begins right after the events of Order 66, Obi-Wan Kenobi occurs 10 years after the events of Revenge of the Sith and 9 years prior to A New Hope. Meanwhile, Season 1 of Andor is set 5 years ahead of Rogue One and A New Hope. Still, despite the decade and change separating The Bad Batch from Obi-Wan Kenobi and Andor, that's not to say the animated series has total control over this blank period. According to Brad Rue, the Lucasfilm Story Group will weigh in when it comes to certain characters, plot lines, and locations, and make sure things are, well, all connected, saying that in full quote, we rely on the Lucasfilm Story Group a lot to answer your question specifically, where anytime we occasionally will have a storyline or a character or a setting that they'll weigh in on us and let us know if there's something else going on. We don't ever feel like restricted, but they are definitely there to help support and make sure things are all connected, ending that quote right there. This isn't the first time a Star Wars showrunner has discussed working in conjunction with Star Wars canon. Finding Nemo's Andrew Stanton, who co-wrote the last 2 episodes of Obi-Wan Kenobi, confessed that canon restrictions can be quite frustrating from a storytelling perspective, noting that Andor is in a safe spot in terms of canonicity, as it can just do whatever the heck it wants. Especially that being said, with the characters that Andor is, well, really dealing with, we pretty much know the fates of everybody that we see in that show. Aside from that, the article continues to say that while it's true that Andor's writers have been having more freedom than with the Ian McGregor-led series Obi-Wan Kenobi, The Bad Batch has even more flexibility compared to both of those. Because of Rogue One, Star Wars fans know who Cassian Andor becomes and how his story ends. On the other hand, Clone Force 99 has yet to be in a Star Wars film, and audiences don't know what the future really holds for them in the future of the Star Wars timeline within the canon. But even even though canon isn't a huge concern at the moment for the Bad Batch, that could change as the show marches on, and it will become more and more restrictive as Season 2 of Andor works into dovetail into Rogue One with those events. This is why it can be fascinating to hear about Lucasfilm's story group and its role in safeguarding against characters, plot lines, and even different locations in the Star Wars timeline and events from contradicting other Star Wars lore and canon. After all, that makes Star Wars unique is that it's all been presented as, well, history in that type of sense. While it's true that Star Wars fans want new and original stories and characters, their narratives still need to support that overarching historical narrative, stuff that's already previously been there before. If not, it could weaken the stakes of both this timeline and any other new stories, and just make people really not care about them all that much anymore. The Lucasfilm story group and the influence is good news for the Bad Batch and Lucasfilm's upcoming slate because, as Brad Rue had explained, the Bad Batch's producer and showrunner, their goal is to make sure things are connected. As for those connections and how the Bad Batch will contribute to this period in the Star Wars timeline, fans simply just don't really know, and well, we won't have to wait that much longer for the continuation of Season 2 and for future seasons of the show as well. From there, that is where the article concludes, and as I had mentioned at the beginning of this video, I have the full article linked in the description down below for you guys to check out there as well. This article talks about a lot of interesting things here, honestly, just not with the Bad Batch, but other shows and taking place in this quote-unquote blind era of time here for the Star Wars canon and the Star Wars timeline. This is a time period that we've never really dealt that much with, maybe besides the comics and books, but now going onto the big screen with live action and shows and that type of thing as well is a kind of a new aspect to it. There is still more to tell about this overall, I guess, timeline here, and this article didn't even mention Solo, a Star Wars story, and everything that has the potential set up with that, a potential Solo sequel, and also the Lando show that would be presumably taking place alongside with the Solo sequel and the overall original Solo movie as well with that show, and kind of continuing on that overall story for what everything that they set up with the Solo original spin-off. This 20-year-old, I guess, timeline here, essentially what we're working with after the events of the Clone Wars and leading up to the events of the original trilogy, really quite reminds me of everything that The Mandalorian is doing with the Mandoverse, filling in those gaps after the events of the original trilogy and leading us into the sequel trilogy. Aside from all that, I want to know all of your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below. I would love to hear you guys all think here about what the Bad Batch is doing, this overall time period here of the Star Wars canon after the events of the Clone Wars and the prequels leading us to the original trilogy. Let me know what you guys all think in the comments down below. What would you like to see with the future of it? I would love to hear you guys all think. Of course, this has been Unofficial Star Wars. Thanks so much for watching today's video. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Have a great one, guys. May the Force be with you as always. Peace out.